My name is Jim Herman. I've represented folks applying for Social Security, Disability, and Veterans benefits for the past, it's coming up on 30 years, so it's not too far away from that mark. But I wanted to pass on some information today about emotional animals, service dogs, that sort of thing. We all have pets, and when we do have a pet, we dearly love that pet most of the time, and that animal can provide a great deal of emotional support and is very much attuned to our emotions. And as we know, in some cases, if a person, for example, has a diabetic condition, the animal sometimes can even be keen at identifying, your sugar levels, so to speak, that sort of thing. I'm going to talk primarily about an emotional support animal because I can tell you, the Social Security Administration is going to look at with a jaundiced eye, in other words, a very skeptical eye with regard to categorizing your animal as a true service animal. But there is a clear distinction and difference between a service animal and an emotional support animal. And so, as a practical matter, you want to, unless you do have a theoretically licensed service dog, then obviously you would go with that route. But if you don't, then you're going to be looking at an emotional support animal. And Social Security Administration has no specific requirements with regard to an emotional support animal, but I can tell you the long and short of it is the more documentation, the more substantiation you have, the more likely they are to say, yeah, this person needs an emotional support animal. And so that's what we're going to focus on. I have to look at my notes on this because I certainly do not pretend to be an expert per se with regard to service animals, which require obviously a great deal more training. But to qualify, and I have to, like I said, I apologize for reading part of this, but to qualify as an emotional support animal, you must have a licensed mental health practitioner, including but not limited to psychologists, therapists, social workers, and so on. Write a letter affirming that you have a qualifying condition, but not limited to depression, anxiety, PTSD, that sort of thing, that is helped by an emotional support animal. And so that's really going to be the bottom line in essence. With regard to your application, you want to be when you apply for disability, you're going to have a much greater probability of an adjudicator, a decision maker at the Social Security Administration saying that, yeah, you need an emotional support animal if you include that in your initial application. Just having your psychiatrist say to you during a session, that you should consider your dog, your animal, whatever, as an emotional support animal. But of course, like all things, Social Security Administration is going to take a bit more than that. It's going to take some documentation, it's going to take some substantiation, and the more detail you include in your initial application with regard to that, the more likely the adjudicator is going to say that, yep, you do need an emotional support animal. And that will help you a great deal if that's the case, because having an emotional support animal at work is going to require significant accommodation on the part of the employer many employers, of course, are going to be reluctant to do so. And so, looking at my notes, even though the animal that you may have in mind is not a true well, shall we say, licensed animal, but there are guidelines online. You can do Google searches on what's required, but you do need to be prepared to offer some documentation with regard to any training that the animal has had. You can ask for information from the dog's trainer if you've had one, or of course a veterinarian, so that will help. Quoting again with regard to a true service animal, those animals are trained to perform specific tasks for people with disabilities, such as maybe guiding the person who may be blind, or providing assistance to the person with mobility impairments. They're having difficulty walking around, getting around. Emotional support animals, on the other hand, are not trained for these specific tasks. They are essentially very helpful companions to you, and provide, as we said earlier, support for you. That's the essence of what I wanted to communicate to you regarding an emotional support animal. And so let's just leave it at that. If you have additional questions, I would encourage you to simply Google emotional support animal, particularly as it relates to a disability or a Social Security claim for disability benefits, and see what additional information you might be able to find there that might strengthen your case, that supports that you truly do need this support animal to be able to function in a work setting. So, as always, I will continue to I'll have good thoughts for you, and wish you the very best with regard to your application for Social Security disability benefits. And I can be reached at HermannAdvantage@gmail.com. That's HERMANN Advantage, ADVANTAGE, @gmail.com. Take good care. Look forward to talking with you soon.